At the beginning of the 20th century, two great Italian figures, belonging to different worlds yet united by an extraordinary spirit of innovation, were bound by a sincere friendship, Guglielmo Marconi and Giacomo Puccini. Their relationship was rooted in deep mutual admiration and shared interests, especially a passion for music and opera. Although Marconi was a scientist and inventor, he had a profound love for music. He played the piano and enthusiastically attended opera performances, greatly admiring Puccini's works. The two often moved within the same international cultural circles, particularly in London, one of the most vibrant centers of artistic and scientific life at the time, where places such as the Savoy Hotel served as meeting points for artists, scientists, and figures of Europe's cosmopolitan society. Their friendship symbolically represents the meeting of two great revolutions of the early 20th century. On one side, the scientific revolution embodied by Marconi, with the development of wireless telegraphy and radio. On the other, the artistic revolution represented by Puccini's music, capable of transforming human emotions and stories into universal melodies. A remarkable episode from this period took place on December 10, 1910, when Puccini's opera La Fanciulla del West premiered at the Metropolitan Opera House, conducted by Arturo Toscanini, with Enrico Caruso among the singers in the cast. The event marked one of the most significant moments in the history of 20th century opera, a great Italian work set in the United States and presented in the most prestigious American opera house. The following year, in 1911, near Pisa, the great Coltano radio station began operating, one of the most powerful radiotelegraph centers of its time and part of the communication system developed by Marconi to connect continents through radio waves. Today, this place carries a particular historical meaning. The Coltano station, once one of the most advanced symbols of global communication, now lies in a state of serious neglect and deterioration. The historic buildings are damaged, many structures have been partly forgotten, and the site, which once played a role in one of the greatest technological revolutions of the 20th century, risks disappearing from collective memory. Yet, from this very place, signals once departed that crossed oceans and connected distant worlds. Only a few months after the Coltano station began operating, a dramatic event demonstrated to the world just how essential that technology had become. On the night of April 14th to 15th, 1912, the ocean liner RMS Titanic sank in the Atlantic Ocean after colliding with an iceberg. On board was the wireless telegraph system developed by Marconi himself. Thanks to that system, the ship's operators were able to send distress signals that were received by nearby vessels, allowing hundreds of people to be rescued. It is also well known that Marconi himself had been invited to travel on the Titanic's maiden voyage, but changed his plans shortly before departure and sailed to New York on another ship, a decision that ultimately saved his life. In the aftermath of the Titanic disaster, the first international convention on maritime safety was established, introducing the requirement that ships carry radio equipment and maintain a continuous 24-hour wireless watch. During those same years, Puccini was living permanently in Torre del Lago, on the shores of Lake Massachusetts, where he composed many of his most celebrated operas. Just a few kilometers away stood the Coltano radio station. Within a very small geographical space, two symbolic places coexisted. On one side, the home where Puccini's music was created, and on the other, one of the centers from which the radio waves of the new era of communication were transmitted. When Puccini died in 1924, radio had not yet become a widespread medium for broadcasting music. However, only a few years later, radio technology began bringing opera into people's homes. In 1930, from the Metropolitan Opera House in New York, Puccini's La Fanciulla del West was broadcast on radio in the United States. From the following year onward, live radio broadcasts of Metropolitan Opera performances became a regular tradition, allowing an ever-growing audience to experience opera across great distances. In this way, Puccini's music, born on the shores of Torre del Lago, could finally travel through the air and reach listeners far away, thanks to Marconi's technology. In 2024, both figures were commemorated on important anniversaries: the centenary of Puccini's death and the 150th anniversary of Marconi's birth. These celebrations were largely held separately. Scientific events and commemorations dedicated to Marconi, especially between Bologna and Sasso Marconi, and opera festivals honoring Puccini between Lucca and Torre del Lago. Yet, the connection between the two men is still rarely told today, even though it represents one of the most fascinating symbols of early 20th century Italy: the meeting between the science of invisible waves and the art of immortal melodies. For this reason, the Coltano radio station deserves to live again, not only as the memory of a great invention, but as a symbolic place where the encounter between two visions of the world can be remembered: that of the scientist who taught signals how to travel through the air, and that of the composer who transformed human emotions into universal music. Today, those antennas, once reaching heights of 250 meters, no longer exist, and those buildings remain silent and abandoned. But the story they hold continues, and will continue to speak, until one day, from Coltano itself, the signal of a renewed memory may once again begin to spread. Because some waves, those of music, science, and human ingenuity, continue to travel through the world, far beyond the time in which they were born.